it's not about just closing the case and getting you off of our docket, but it's truly about what can we do to help you, not just so that I won't see you again, but just so that you will be in a better place for your life and your family. And it could be my own upbringing. It could be, my past work as a public defender. But I truly believe that those experiences make my role as a judge, just most impactful.
It's just something that I live. It's just something that I live. Hey, hey, hey. It's just something that I live that this world don't live. It's just something that I feel that this world don't feel. I gotta keep it real. J.E. Get 'em. It's just something that I live that this world don't live. It's just something that I feel.
Welcome to the Let Bob podcast. It's your boy Ant, and again, man, Dave's not here, man. We're gonna get Dave back soon, though. But today, man, we got something very special for you. I'm sitting in front of a black female judge, and I'm not being tried for anything. We're down in Jacksonville, Florida. We're still at Lit TV on this interview, but this is special because how often do you see a black female judge? But her story is different, and we're going to let her tell her story. But today, Judge Rhonda Peoples-Waters is with us.
Yay.
She's from a neighboring city to me, man. She's from Selma, Alabama. So this is an interesting and a delightful interaction for me to be able to sit here and bring her to our audience today and let y'all hear her story, which is a good story. So, the big question is, did you always know you were going to be a judge?
Heck no. Absolutely not. I mean, growing up in Selma, my parents were educators, mom teacher. I knew I wanted to do something in law, and I actually thought I wanted to be like an FBI agent, and all of that was always, a passion of mine. But to become a judge, that thought didn't enter my mind until I was actually practicing as a lawyer and saw others that, looked like us and realized that that could be me.
Okay, no, that's good. So again, when I like to highlight common things that are said with my guests. You were exposed and you saw this, and that's
Absolutely.
what planted the seed for you.
Absolutely.
So talk to us about the journey, though. So you're a lawyer, and so back up. Where did you go to law school?
I went to University of Florida,
Okay.
so I'm a Gator.
Okay, a Gator, okay.
But it's important that I tell you, yes, grew up in Selma, and I told you my parents were educators, but my granddad was a janitor at my high school.
Oh, wow.
And my grandmother actually went to high school with Coretta Scott King.
Oh.
And so I like people to really understand, just those humble beginnings that truly I had nothing, we had nothing. And that's what I think is most, memorable. And the word to others is that regardless of what you have, you can be right here or be greater.
Yeah. Now, that's interesting. So, humble beginnings. You said Coretta Scott School?
Yes, she went to high school with Coretta Scott King in Marion, Alabama.
No, that's cool. That's that history, We're getting now we're moving so fast with technology, and I think our history is being challenged in a lot of different places. So to be that close to it, I think that's something that could be very exciting. But so you come from Florida. So how did you you come from Selma. How did you get to Florida?
Well, I got a scholarship to go to Fisk, HBCU in Nashville, and I'm concerned about this Freaknik video that's about to come out. Let me say that real quick. But back on point, went to Fisk University, and then got a scholarship to go to University of Florida. And I knew, at Fisk that I was thinking about going to law school, but to actually be able to afford to go, became a reality when I was able to get one of the Virgil Hawkins fellowships to attend University of Florida, and it was a fellowship to help minority students attend law school.
Wow. No, that's exciting. So HBCU grad, Fisk.
Yes.
I'm a FAMU grad, as you know, so I apologize to you. But you get the financial capability, so now it becomes reality. I can actually go to law school.
Yes,
so you
absolutely.
end up at the University of Florida.
Yes.
Okay, so then how did you get to Jacksonville? Because Florida's in Gainesville. So what made you come to Jacksonville?
Right. Well, then I was offered a job at the public defender's office in Jacksonville, and it was, just a great community, and I welcomed it. So started there, worked there for 7 years, loved it, became the division chief of our repeat offender courts, got a lot of trial practice, and then left from there, went into my own private practice for several years. And that was when I really thought, oh my gosh, that I could be a judge, and I began that journey.
So you started your own practice.
Yes.
Interesting. Ownership mentality. Where did this come from? Did you grow up seeing owners? Did you, in your journey as an attorney, you saw other attorneys owning their own practice? Like what made you shift and say, you know what, I want to have my own practice?
Well, when I left the public defender's office, I did go and join another firm, but being in that firm and having the experience, the connections, I knew I was always community driven and community minded. I knew that I needed to, forge my own way, set up my own firm so that I could do what I wanted to do in the community and not be so tied to just the regular, attorney work.
Wow. You sound very familiar to another guest we had, Dr. Royce McGowan. He was talking about the freedom in ownership.
Yes.
It sounds like that's what you were seeking. I need
That's
the freedom
true.
to be able to serve my purpose and do what I'm trying to do.
Exactly.
Now, so how was that? How was owning your own practice? Did you like it? Was it like, oh man, I just should have stayed at the firm? Like, how was that journey? Like the sacrifices?
Wow. And I appreciate it even more now because now I'm back into, a government sector.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the freedom that I had in my own firm, the freedom that it gave me to raise my daughter as a single mother who is now about to graduate on May 6th with her electrical engineering degree from FAMU.
That's what I already knew you was going to say fam.
Yes. And so, it's that sacrifice that I was able to afford by being a business owner. Now, was it many sacrifices? There were times where my employees got paid and I didn't get paid, so you got to be able to talk about the good with the bad.
Yeah.
But there were so many times where, I was just blessed and I was able to financially afford to do many of the things that, even now, I don't have that same accessibility.
Yeah. So we got our own firm now, right? And so we get this thought to, I want to become a judge. So how does that work? How do you make the decision, you decide you want to do it, but what happens next? What do? You run for a judge? How does this work?
Well, in Florida, there are two ways that you can become a judge. Either you're going to be appointed by the governor at that time, the sitting governor, or you will be elected by the people.
Okay.
And my journey is different because I tried 16 times to be appointed by the governor at that time. And then there was actually one time that I ran before I was successful. So I actually had 2 elections. One of them was a failed or unsuccessful election. And then obviously the last one was a successful one. But back to that application process of going before the local judicial nominating commission and having to be interviewed, having an extensive background application process. I mean, the things that they don't teach you in law school and, way before law school, make sure your credit is straight, make sure that you have the connections that you need that'll build your resume, that'll be able to talk to the people that know the governor. All of those things. It's a full kind of book on how do you get appointed to be successful in this, judicial track. And we've got to teach Black folks how to do that. And that's why, I know that my story is important to tell.
Wow, that's interesting. So they check your credit to be a judge?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Your credit and everything else. Your taxes. Have you ever been late on your taxes? Everything.
Wow. Interesting. The filters are real.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, so you learn they're checking all these things, and obviously you lined up, right? Because you have 16 attempts.
Yes.
So 16 times, Did you ever say, well, you know what, this is not for me? Or were you just like, one, I'm going back. Two, I'm going back. Because I'm assuming you aligned with everything required. Why do you think it took so many times and it still wasn't successful in the appointment path?
Absolutely.
What do you think?
Well, and I applied from 2009 was my first application. And my last application was in 2020. So over the course of 11 years, I submitted those applications. And in Florida, you submit to the local JNC, where your cousin, Dexter Davis, was one of the few black people to serve on that JNC.
Okay.
But you interview with that local JNC, and a select number, usually 5 or 6, are chosen from that local JNC to go to the governor's office in Tallahassee, and then the governor will make the final selection out of, that 5 or 6. And so I did not make it out of the local JNCs that first round, the first 3 times that I applied. But the last 13 times out of the 16, I made it out of the first round to the second round and went to the governor's, office to be interviewed. And I believe that there were so many people that believed in me, and on paper, they saw that I was fully qualified. They saw that the community was supporting me, but I don't believe that I was the choice of the governor. They didn't believe that I aligned with maybe some of their beliefs. You got to remember, I came from a criminal defense background, and sometimes that's not favored, especially here in Florida. They want you to have more of the prosecutorial background.
Okay.
It's also important to understand that as minorities, we're often seen as, lenient, and to have that lenient mind. And so, I believe that all of that had something to deal with how I did not, how I wasn't successful.
Wow, that's interesting. It takes a different mentality to continuously do that, though. Especially when you're making it to, it's almost like making it to the finish line, but that's not being able to cross 13 times, right?
Right.
And so, okay, we've done this. Now we're gonna do the election path, right? And so you say you had 2 attempts there. The first unsuccessful, the second was successful. So let's talk about the first attempt. What happened there? What was the outcome, or what do you believe made that situation not successful?
Well, in that one, there were 3 of us in the race, and then in the end, I made it to the runoff, and there were 2 of us. And I do believe finances played the biggest role in the reason why we were unsuccessful. I mean, we were just completely outmatched. When you're talking about, raising maybe close to, 100,000, when the other side has 300,000-400,000. They had a lot more of the connections and people that had millions of dollars, behind them, and they could run TV ads and things like that. And we just weren't, I don't believe, in that financial category.
Wow, that's interesting that even in trying to become a judge, access to capital plays a role in that, right? We talk about it as business owners. Especially with black-owned businesses, one of the number one challenges as a black-owned business is access to capital, for black startups especially, because you're trying to prove you have this idea and it works in the marketplace, and that often takes time. But unlike our counterparts, we don't have access to this immediate capital. We don't have, millions of dollars that we can go tap into,
Right.
Like our white counterparts. So that's interesting to know that even in trying to be elected as a judge, this still is a thunderstorm over your head as a minority. Okay, so if you don't have the capital, you can't market, I'm assuming. So if you can't market, you can't be successful. So the first time around, we believe it was finances. So the second time around, I'm assuming you got access to more financing and were able to be successful in the journey, because sounds to me like all 16 attempts and these 2 elections, you were always the most capable choice.
Well, I certainly hope to, believe that as well. But, yes, this last time around, we were able to raise more money. And let me say this, on that last time around, in 2020, it was an even more difficult race because we chose to run against a sitting judge.
Oh, wow.
a judge that was already, appointed by the governor and had been in the seat for about a year or so.
Wow.
And so that in and of itself is taboo to do that, especially in Jacksonville, where we don't typically run against people that are already sitting as a judge. But we chose to do that, and we raised more money than that judge. And that was a lot about just talking to the community and letting them know that we had never elected a black female judge, even in, the year 2020. I can't pass by the fact that we were in the midst of COVID and, the whole, just, everything that was going on in society at that time. And I think that there was such awareness about our own power that by the time our election came, people were standing outside, waiting to vote. They were lined up. And to hear people say, I'm specifically here because I want to make sure that I vote for the black female judge. Some of them didn't even know my name, but they just knew that there was a black female judge on the ballot, and they were going to stand in line so that they could, accomplish that vote.
Wow. That's just God's plan, right?
Absolutely.
So to your point, you're in a COVID year, a pandemic year. You got all this. You've attempted to go the appointment route 16 times, failed election. You had every reason to quit, but you didn't.
Right.
And I think a common principle there that when we're talking to, successful people, successful business owners, entrepreneurs, anybody of a place of power, persistence is always present.
Yes,
right?
yes.
You didn't give up, and it was work that came with it. And I think we talk about it often on the shows that on the outside looking in, those people who come stand in front of you while you're on the bench now, they don't know that the story, right? They don't appreciate what it took to sit there, right? And so, I definitely am excited to sit here and talk with you. I think it's something that you don't often I won't often get an opportunity to do, just because of how it works in this country. Unfortunately, access to people like you and people to even be put in a position is just rare.
And another thought that I have, which was part of my intrigue about connecting with you and make sure that I shared this story, was I don't tell people this often, but I believed enough in myself to invest in myself.
Yes.
And I've spent thousands, but on this last race, I had to put in $50,000 of my own dollars to be able to know that I could effectively run this campaign. Now, we raised more than that, and there were so many other people that contributed. But for me to put that $50,000 in and say it was worth it, to go to a job where I actually will be making less, but I knew to sit in that seat and to be able to have that authority and power to be able to open the doors for many others that, look like us, that it was worth whatever I had to invest. And I don't regret it at all, even though I'm still paying it back now. But I just want to say that, you got to be so passionate about what your purpose is that you are willing to invest, because I've had judges even now kind of, berate me and be like, are you really serious that you spent your own money? I did. I believed in myself and this assignment enough that I was willing to do that investment.
No, that's commendable. I think in the startup space, that's something investors often look at. Right. You as the founder, how much have you invested? Because how can you ask me for some money if you hadn't invested yourself? So I think that's definitely commendable of you. And you said something very important. You have to be passionate about the decision to invest in yourself and whatever it is you're trying to achieve. And another guest said it well. It sounds like it was bigger than money, to become a judge.
Yes.
It was a bigger goal, right? It wasn't about making money. It was about changing lives, impacting other people.
Absolutely.
And for that, you'll always be taken care of. I'm just a believer in that. God always looks out for those who looks out for others, right?
Yes.
Curious, in this environment, we see so much on television with people who look like us, committing crimes left or right, these young guys and girls. How do you feel about it on a daily basis when you're seeing, people who look like you constantly coming across? How does that make you feel in the experience of a judge?
Well, I mean, it's certainly, it grips your heart because you know that many of them know better.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them were raised better, but some weren't. So I believe from my background, there's just an extra level of patience and consideration for me to take the time and say, what do you really need? It's not about just closing the case and getting you off of our docket, but it's truly about what can we do to help you, not just so that I won't see you again, but just so that you will be in a better place for your life and your family. And it could be my own upbringing. It could be, my past work as a public defender. But I truly believe that those experiences make my role as a judge, just most impactful.
Yeah.
I know that beyond a sentence and a court case, that I have the ability to really enhance somebody's life if I just take the time. We had traffic court this week, and that's where you have a lot of people that don't have a license. But people don't understand that if you don't have a license, usually that's going to lead you to a life of crime, because if you can't get anywhere, if you can't get a job, then you're going to figure out how you're going to get what you need.
Yes.
And so I take the time to help them to understand the bureaucracy of our system. They can't understand once you get 2 and 3 tickets, how is it that I'm going to get myself out of this system and be able to get a license. So usually that means that we got to take the time in court to try to help them to understand how to, navigate around this system. And I kind of have a reputation of being in court longer. One of these days we were there till like 7 o'clock. But I tell them, you know what, if I have to choose between hurry up and sending these people out and seeing them over and over again versus us staying here all day, I'm going to choose them every time. And so that background that I have, I believe that helps not just people that look like me, but it helps so many people in this community.
Yes.
And that's why I know our diversity is needed on this bench.
Yes.
Our experiences, people try to make it seem like we are not worthy, that only people that have been rich and have a whole bunch of money need to occupy these seats. No, those of us that haven't had, we need to occupy these seats because we understand much of what many of the people that are coming before us are experiencing.
So what you're talking about is your bias.
Absolutely.
Because and that's kind of how we are at Bob. Our robo-advisor product that's on the marketplace, it's biased towards the black experience, the way that it invests your money, how it pick and choose stocks for you, takes in consideration of, in our community, capital is just hard to come by. So we need to protect that first before we start trying to do other things. And so that biased mentality that comes from me is built into the software that targets our community. And I think you're saying the same thing as a judge. You're more prone to understand this young black male or female who comes in front of you because, it may remind you of a friend of yours, or sometimes it may just remind you of yourself when you were that age, right? And our white counterparts just unfortunately don't have that capability because they're not black.
But I will say that, it's probably some innate type of bias, but in the end, when you're talking about administering justice, it is you following the law, and it's also where you have discretion, which we all have. It's you being able to say, well, my discretion says this and that, so that it'll equal out and ultimately benefit our community. Yeah. And I just wanted to make sure that, some people, when they hear the word bias, they think that it is you not following the law or you being unjust. Correct. But it really does still equal the justice that we want.
That's correct. And it just guides your discretionary decision making.
Absolutely.
Right? Your experience, right?
Yes.
And the interesting thing is that I would like to know, we talked about this long assessment of you before you can, submit to be chosen as a judge. This process, right? Mm-hmm. Does this process include any effort around the mentality or your experience with the probability of people who you'll be encountering as a judge? Do they assess your mentality? Basically, is there a mental health assessment of you to just kind of figure out, well, how does this person think? How does she look at, like, examples of cases that comes in front of you? Like, do they examine how you make your decisions, or that get thrown out of the way and it's all these other things that at the end of the day?
Oh, no, I think that's on the table every day.
Okay.
How it is that I make this decision. How will I be, bought, or how will I be influenced? I have plenty of people that come before me that I've worked with, and I just try to be fair to each of them to
Yeah.
make sure that whether you black, whether you white, regardless of, your background, that I follow the law, but that I am fair, that I'm consistent with what I do. But do I think that they wonder, wow, how is she going to be? Because many of them do know my story. They know what I've gone through.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I hope that they're pleased. But ultimately, you just want to make sure that the people that you're serving, even if it's not the exact outcome that they would have wanted, that they feel like they've been heard, that they feel like they were treated professionally, that they know that you respect them. And that's ultimately what my goal is every day.
So let me ask the question a little differently, though. So what I'm asking is, there was a lot of professional qualifications that you had to meet to become a judge.
Okay.
Were there human qualifications? Like, how do you see people? How do
Absolutely.
you make your decisions? Do they ask that type of thing when they're trying to qualify you as a judge, or is that just something that's not considered? Because if it's not asked, then I think it'd be a good thing that we try to push to get that in the picture. Like,
Well, I don't necessarily know that I've ever been asked it, but they ask you that in a backdoor way.
Okay.
Of, what are your experiences? What have you done? Or to tell us about cases that are important to you.
Okay.
Tell us about your beliefs. Or, they'll ask you, do you align with the governor's belief on, such and such thing?
Okay.
So even though it may not be direct, they want to know, and they are looking at your history. They're looking at every case that you've ever taken or handled, and that's helping them to assess how they believe your mental, thoughts
I see
are.
what you're saying. So they're indirectly asking you questions and then making an assumption based on that.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think
all
so,
right.
more so than them being direct about
Okay.
what are my thoughts and beliefs.
Okay. Well, man, it's just been enlightening to hear your story. And you got your gavel.
Yes,
Oh, that's
even
so-
though we don't really use it, it's just a symbol.
No, you a black female judge. I be carrying my gavel everywhere. I pull out the store when I'm paying. I will wear it out. So it's been amazing and delightful to hear your story. We thank you for your time, and we gotta do something. I really want to talk to you about the AKA stuff.
Okay,
We really
well,
gotta do something.
I am available. I'm here to help. Thank you for sharing and spreading the word to people, because that's what this is about too.
Oh yeah.
Opening the doors and encouraging them.
Yeah, we want the next Judge Rhonda Peoples-Waters to see you on our podcast. That little girl who didn't even know she could be a judge.
Yes,
We want to see you
yes,
and become
yeah.
inspired. So we definitely thank you for your time. So,
Thank you.
been another great episode of the Let Bob podcast. Again, you can find us also on all social media at We Are Let Bob for the company. I am Let Bob for myself. And we're out.
It's just something that I feel that this world don't feel. I gotta keep it real.